Hello and welcome to another Shiv live stream. Now, as is always the case, I want to make sure that everything's working before we get too deeply into introductions and why we're here today. So hopefully you are able to see us. Let me just check and see if I can see us. I can't at the moment. Okay. Let's have a look. Magali, just relax for the moment. Hey, there we go. Now we are, at the very least, we're live on YouTube, so that's working, which is fantastic.
Perfect. I think most people are joining on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So let's check that.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So if you're watching this on YouTube, hi. Hello, YouTube people. We're just trying to get this working on LinkedIn. So if you just give us a moment, let me just see exactly what's going on here. Yes, no, we are, Magali. We are, I believe we are good.
Perfect. Technology works.
Yeah, it seems to. So what I'm going to do is just to make sure that everyone can see us on LinkedIn, because I'm not sure how well the event itself seems to be working. I'm going to pop a comment onto here. So join the live stream here. There we go. Smashing. Okay. So, Magali, thank you so much for coming along. It's been a long time since we had you on the podcast, and I think you've had 80 holidays since the last time we spoke. Is that correct?
That's correct, but you can't tell because I don't go to sunny destinations or something. I don't know what's wrong with my skin, but unfortunately, you can't tell. I still look like I've been working in London for 8 months, which is good for pretending that I work.
Where have you been on holiday?
Recently I was in south of France. So I'm lucky that my family lives there. So that doesn't really count as holidays, by the way. And I'm going to Lanzarote. So yeah, if anyone's got any suggestions for things to do over there.
Yeah, let us know. I've never been to Lanzarote, and I've never been to France.
Really? You're the first English person who I meet who has never been to France.
Yeah, I feel like it's silly, really, because we're very close.
I mean, have you been to South Kensington? Because it's pretty much similar.
I have been there once, yeah.
Here we go. That's it. Chelsea, South Kensington, you're good.
Okay, so yes, I can see we have a LinkedIn live area, which is fantastic. It doesn't seem to be linked to the event, so I will just see if I can fix this up. Magali, whilst I get this going, would you mind giving our watchers just an overview into your history? I mean, apart from your holidays, who you are, what you do, and how you came to write this ebook.
Good, perfect. Yes, I work. So I work in product management. I was recently head of product in a small company that got acquired by Cisco, and I'm specialized in data-related products. So everything that is what we call data product. So where you can visualize data, model it, and then data as a product, where the product is the data. So we collect data and package it. And then there are APIs, it's like a platform, and SDKs, and also a web interface to be able to access the data. I've worked on products at all stages, so 0 to 1 product management, taking a product and improving it iteratively, also ending product. I don't think we talk a lot about end of life, and I know we had a podcast together to talk about how to deprecate products. I've also worked in lots of different industries, market research, financial services, telecommunication, in small startups and large corporations. I'm based in London, so that's why I don't know if everybody is based in the UK or where you are, but the reference at the beginning about South Kensington was in London. So I strongly encourage you to visit London if you haven't been. And that's it. So yeah, so my story with the ebook. I'm always looking for what the latest trends in product management are, and there's a lot of information on LinkedIn, on some product communities. There are lots of product conferences. And I think that, well, you'd have to basically spend your time being on those platforms to gather all the information that's out there and make an opinion about what the future looks like, and how as an individual you can be ready for the future, and how as a leader you can make your organization future proof for what's coming, the future of work, but especially in the product management field. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a single place where people who don't have that kind of time, or just want to see like a summarized version of all the trends. So that's why I wrote this ebook, and I focused on like the changes we see in terms of people, in terms of processes, and in terms of data and technology. And the ebook is available to download for free from my website. I can put the link as well in the chat. But I'm here to answer any question about what's going on in products, and how to make sure that your career is future-proof.
So who would you say you wrote this book with in mind? What was your target audience?
I think there's really three types of people. One is new product managers, people who are trying to move into product management. And I know there are lots of them. We see lots of product boot camps, product courses online. So a lot of people are trying to get into product, but they need to learn not only the frameworks and the product management skills as per the modern product management techniques, but also they need to make sure that what they learn is future-proof. So that's for them. I think it's also very valuable for people higher up in the hierarchy, like product leaders, for example, because they have to make sure their organization is ready for the future, right? So raise their heads above the horizon, and not just be in the day-to-day, but start thinking about how they enable their team to be efficient in the future product world. And the third type of people who can benefit from it is the people who actually don't work in product but have to work with product managers, because I think that they need to, it can help them to understand what's going on in the product world, to have better empathy for people who work in product management, and also to help them work better together with us in product. So if you work in sales, product marketing, design, engineering, I think it really helps if you know what's going on in the product world to better work with your product team.
That's really nice. I wasn't expecting you to say that. That it's written for people who maybe then want to understand more about the product world, because they have to work with product people, and that's a good thing, I think. Now, when we mention your book and we look through what we've got on there, you've categorized into people, processes, and data and technology. Now, does the order of those chapters mean anything, or was that just? Did you? Yeah. I'm curious.
So people, process, and data and technology, there's that triangle diagram where they all go together, and there's always that saying that, let's say you bring a new tool, you bring a new technology. Well, if you don't have people on board with that, and if you don't have the right processes, it's not going to do any magic. So I like that kind of like mental model. In terms of the order, I think it starts with people. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm a people manager and I care a lot about people on a personal level. I'm very interested in everything, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's a bit of bias, to be honest, because you can see the chapter 1, which is about people, is actually quite long, because it's also bigger than just product management. These are trends which are happening in pretty much all fields, all industries, but they therefore apply to product management even more because, well, product managers are people, but we also design products for people, our users. So that's twice as important, I would say. Processes is second. Say maybe because there's a lot, but the data and technology are grouped together because I didn't want this ebook to be too technical as well. I don't claim to be an expert on AI. I don't claim to be an expert, from a technical standpoint. And I don't think PMs should be experts in technology. I think we need to know enough, and depending on the type of product, enough is going to be at a different level. But that's also why data and technology comes last. It also enables me to not put AI at the first, in the first chapter, because I think we're also starting to be a bit tired.
Yeah. So it's how much of it is how much AI fatigue do people have, I wonder?
Yes, it used to be Zoom fatigue. Now it's AI.
That's AI fatigue. Yeah, I mean, there's so much, and it is refreshing. Yeah, but I think you start the people aspect of it is fantastic. Now, I'm wondering. I was looking through the book, and one of the first things you include on here was the Carnot model, or Kano. I'm never sure which way to pronounce it. I was told it's Carnot, but I might be sound corrected.
I don't know. I was hoping, because as a French person, I listening to how people say things, and I'm like, oh, that should be right. No, I say Kano model, but
yeah, everyone knows what you mean. That's the important thing. Now, I find the model always very interesting, and I've always found it quite a fascinating way to consider what you include or don't include in, I don't know, when in your product or just in life. Right, because I think actually when you look at things, your basic needs and delighters, and actually there's a good metaphor there for just how we prioritize our own time here. But I think the kind of model it's been around for a while. So what was it that made you include that as part of the future, or a book about the future, when it is something that is so from the? I mean, I say so from the past. It's been around for a while. What made you decide to include it?
I personally, I've never thought about using it in my personal life. Actually, now that you say it. Obviously, Ben, being on this, on a podcast with you is a delighter, so that's why.
Thank you.
I think a lot of the things we do are based on models that are from the past anyway. And even when we talk about AI now, it's been going for a long time, and it just comes to be like mainstream now. But I think that there is a theme in the introduction of the ebook, which is that even though some concepts aren't new, some companies are still catching up. And that's the case with so in that case, so that's why it's still relevant. But if I take the example of Agile, which you will be very familiar with, it's been going on for like more than 20 years. And the manifesto was written, I think, in 2001 or something.
Yeah.
And some companies are still doing waterfall, whereas they should be operating in a more iterative way. And so I think that we take things for granted, like some of the concepts, and that's also where the idea of the book comes from, is to enable people, because there are some sections at the end of each chapter which are about like assessing yourself and your organization, is doing like a reality check. Am I on top of this trend or not? And it may be an old concept. I don't know, product operations, for example, which is also mentioned in the process section. I mean, I've been hearing about product operations for at least maybe 3-5 years. But now there's a book from Melissa Perry, so it is becoming even more mainstream, and everybody's thinking about it. But really, is it not already too late? Like, it's not too late, but I mean, we have been talking about it for quite some time. So I think companies, because of their size, because of their priorities, can't be on top of everything, and so there are some older concepts which are worth mentioning again. Because they're still valid.
No, I 100% agree with you. I was talking to Nesreen Shungal. I probably pronounced the name so wrong. I've got a terrible habit on the podcast when they come on. I'm like, oh, and I can repeat it, but then when I have to put it for my memory, I'm trying to say David Pereira's name.
If I don't write it down as well, I write it. Oh, I've lost you. 1 second. Okay, we're back. I write. Here's my tip. I write it like in a, like in English. I write it in French personally when people tell me their name. and then I know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, that's the thing. My handwriting is so bad that when I look down to read it, I'm like, oh my God, if I try and say that, I'm going to do an even worse job. Oh, no, Changel, I think I did write it down phonetically. Look at that. But when I met Nesreen, she was talking about the work at, particularly at Google, around prioritizing for delight and how it comes from the Carno model. And I read out the Carno model. Another friend of mine who I spoke to recently, and he did gave me a question or two to kind of pose to you. Also a big fan of the Carno model. And instead of talking about old things, he's also a bit older.
Mm-hmm.
In your book, you write about the upcoming generation of users. Do you feel that there is a challenge for older product professionals to relate to a younger generation?
It can be a challenge, yeah, because I think the younger generations, they can think differently, they can have different appetite for different things, and if you don't really make a conscious effort to try and understand them, then you can just completely miss out on their needs. And if you're a product manager, I mean, I think it's 50% of the population in the US, of the working population in the US now is part of those younger generations. Well, that means pretty much 50% of your users are from these younger generations. So if you miss what matters to them, then your product can't be successful. So it can be a challenge. I'm not saying it's easy. I think people do this, like when they have children, for example, where they are from younger generation, you have to adapt to their way of thinking and you learn things. But if you don't have children, or if you don't have people like this that you can meet regularly and like learn from them, then you need to make a conscious effort to learn.
I think that's a really good tip, actually, just to spend time with people.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say have children.
No, not a good tip. Not a good tip. I told you about the woes of children. No, not a good tip. No, children are great. Children are great. It's funny, really, kids do make you feel old. My children started using the phrase, I said, Daddy, can you search it up? Meaning, can I use Google to search for something? I said, search it up. And me and my wife were like, where do they get this weird language from search it up? And then somebody who's probably watching this now, somebody who works for me, Shireen, said, I'll just go search it up. I'm like, oh, it turns out that's what young people say. And I think I think hanging around a diverse set of people, I think helps. Now, I wonder how many maybe people who aren't in the product space, or maybe the way that people talk about products, even the way we talk about software development. I think it's that spending the time with your users or customers is invaluable. And there's a huge canyon of understanding for us to kind of leap over that we can only do if we actually spend time with the humans or samples of the humans that we are looking to serve in some way. So that's a fantastic advice, actually go and spend time with people. Now, when we really talking about people, talking about having a diverse set of people, when you were on the podcast, we did talk about equity and equality and some really important topics. And when that went out on TikTok, some of the clips, it was some of the most some of the highest engagement we've had on TikTok. Maybe not for the good reasons. Right.
I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know, but I see you on TikTok. See, that's one of the ways as well. You can see what's going on there, and because if you're still on Facebook, well, you see social media from another generation, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. Yeah. Okay.
It is. And whenever I see people like me on TikTok, I'm always like, oh my God, what are you doing on there? Like, do you not know better than this? But no, it was interesting, the amount of comments we had around. I mean, and they were stupid comments. They made no sense. What percentage of what's your diversity percentage you're aiming for in a team? I just thought it was like, this is clearly somebody just trying to start some kind of argument, which they wouldn't then engage with afterwards when we replied to the comments. I think they were just kind of saying their thing. But I mean, when you're talking about the future of product management, there's a strong element here that we were talking about around diversity and inclusion. So if someone's listening to this wondering, well, hold on, my job as a product person, like how do I embrace diversity and inclusion without it being more than just kind of lip service and trying to hit some say the right things? Like, what makes it so important, and how can as a product people, how can we strive to achieve it?
Well, there's a lot, and I think to go back to that comment from someone on TikTok, I think it's good to have the conversation. If it triggers the conversation, I think it's a good thing. As a warning, I don't have all the answers either. I don't work in HR. This is my own experience. And I think that's going to be my first answer is anyway, you should follow your company policies and talk to your HR team if you've got a question about the topic, and they should be able to help. But as a product manager, well, first of all, as a product leader, just like any leader, in any field, not just product, you deal with people. You're going to deal with people from different generations with different characteristics and all of that. So this is just like any other job which requires working with human, i.e. every other job. And then on the product side, especially, well, one of the things, for example, when we are designing user research is to make sure that you include people who are representative of the population. And because we were talking about age, I'm going to take this example.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're designing a product, then it may be that you ask people to join your user research through, I don't know, social media, and therefore you reach a certain type of audience. And if you sent an email, for example, you would reach another type of audience. It's also thinking about how we design those experiments to make sure that we've got the right people invited. I think user research is the one that comes more to mind. Are there some quotas? It needs to be representative of your product. I think it's a good analysis to do if you've never done it. See if you can see some patterns as well. Yeah.
So thinking about this, and in your book, you mentioned the blurring of B2B and B2C. Mm-hmm. Business to business, business to consumer, and the product that me and I always find it funny talking about him as a co-founder, but me and my co-founder have been working on for quite some time, and our product is a mixture of B2C and B2B. And from a product management perspective, we find that provides us with certain challenges around prioritization, where we focus our energy. And who are we looking to serve, and how do we serve them? And given that actually when we look at the demographics as well, is that actually our users are people probably 20 to 40, maybe a bit younger than that. That on the B2B side, these are companies run by mostly people who are over the age of 30 to 35 to 40. And so they're very different expectations. So when you wrote about B2B and B2C, like blurring and challenges that come with that for future proofing, like what were your insights from the book in relation to that blurring of the lines?
I think it's mostly a trend that we've seen. Like B2B product used to be terrible, and they still are. I'm not going to mention some names, but I'm pretty sure that it's starting to think, oh yeah. And what we're seeing is a trend in B2B to make products easier to use, right? So it's mostly centered around the user experience. And actually, if you think about the Kano model, that was delighters, actually. It used to be like no delighters in B2B, basically, because you don't have a choice. You have to use Workday because this is where you manage your people. You have to use Salesforce because this is where you manage your customers and all of that. So you don't have a choice. Like in general, you don't choose which tool you're going to use for your job. But then came an example is Slack. Well, Slack is enjoyable, and Slack, they changed recently the themes, and they obviously have all these emojis, emoji reactions and all that. These are delighters. Like really, there's nothing particularly of value in being able to change the theme to like new colors. It's really a delight for the users, and people in a business context actually love Slack for for all the integrations that you can do with Jira in terms of engineering integrations and all of that, but also because it's fun. So this is the angle I was taking in the ebook about the fact that now in B2B, the user experience is very important, and bringing a bit of fun is good. One of the things, one of the tools I can give as an example is a ClickUp. If you think it's kind of like Jira, it's a project management tool. It was designed more as a generalist project management tool initially, whereas Jira is mostly focused on development. But a ClickUp is fun to use. It's just really nice experience, and every time I've got to go back into Jira, I'm like, so yeah, making things fun for B2B users as well. Because if you think about the job market, so now the job market, and that's one of the things I talk about in the book as well, is a bit more challenging. There's a lot of competition because so many people got laid off from that company, and there was a constraint in terms of profit and revenue. So companies had to cut cost, and it's a lot more difficult now. But if you think about a couple of years ago, like during COVID, when the market was really a market for the applicants rather than for companies, well, your tech stack is important as well. Which tools do you use? Are they the latest tools on the market? Even now, like, people want to work on AI. So if you don't try and do something with AI, you're not starting to think about your product strategy and your AI strategy to empower your people internally to use AI, to start integrating AI into a product. You are less attractive as a company. So it's the same for B2B product. I think people look at, and the applicants, they look at what tech stack you use, and if it's painful products, they're also less likely to be happy with.
Yeah, it's really fascinating as a topic, because I mean, someone that runs a business, and I'm like 50% of the accounts department, as well as being 50% of everything else in the company, because there's not many of us. Is that when it comes to raising invoices, particularly for some large organizations, it's like Oracle almost designed the tool to be impossible to use. It's incredibly difficult. I did an onboarding questionnaire today for a company, 83 questions to answer. And for me, like, I don't know, for me, from a joy perspective, it was laid out. It wasn't brilliantly designed, but 90% of the questions weren't relevant to me because I'm not on site helping people drill holes. But I don't think people put that. I think when it's a utility, when you have to use it, like you have to raise an invoice, so you have to lodge your hours and workday, you have, unfortunately, to use Jira, that actually then that, like, people don't really care so much. And I don't think that many companies probably really care enough. I think maybe it will change over time, but it's interesting, the challenges that it kind of you're presented with if you've got that. Yeah. How did it be to be more like B2C? I wish it was all just as nice and attractive, but it isn't. Now, go on, Magali.
I think it's changing, but and big legacy companies don't have the choice. They have to follow that trend, because otherwise they're starting to lose out to new competitors who are doing this super well. I think the challenge that big companies have is just changing things just takes a long time, because there is so much code, there's so much technical debt. It's a huge rethink of the platform. So I think they're doing it, but it just takes time.
Yeah. Okay. So one question I have has come through, and it was always going to happen, because I think the one thing that I find really fascinating is I love a lot of the conversations where you can kind of go deeper into certain things, and it's all a little bit more ethereal or a bit more theoretical. But people want to know about practical things. They want to know about tools and processes and canvases, dare I say. I mean, there's a canvas for everything, it would seem, at the moment. So when there's a section in the book, actually, I was just checking, proliferation of tools and frameworks. Were there any particular, like, tools or frameworks or things which you looked at and thought, actually, these are really relevant for product professionals, like, going into the future?
Right. So I think there's a basic product stack, which is which comprises of so some kind of sprint management. Like Jira is an example. On top of that, a layer for roadmap. So like road mapping tool, like product plan, AHA, and all of that. And we know that Atlassian is now making a lot of improvements with like Jira product discovery as add-ons. So some companies start using that. But I keep on seeing companies who don't have a road mapping solution, and they use spreadsheets and slides. And it's really a pain for product managers and also for people who are interested in looking at the roadmap, so sales, marketing, and all that. And a documentation solution, so applies to document everything. So Confluence or Notion is great as well. And a product analytics tool, whether it's Heap, Mixpanel, all of these tools. Very important. I think from the top of my head, these are the most important product that you need as a product manager. Now, because we have to talk about that, I find that I use some kind of AI on a daily basis. So if your company has a version of a GPT model that you can use internally and put information because they pay for it, I think it's a plus. Because it really helps to write documentation and to kind of challenge your thinking as a product manager, like make sure you don't forget things. It's almost like having a mentor, and you can bounce ideas and all of that. So that's very convenient. So I would say some kind of version of generative AI is important. And now we see that most of the tools that I've mentioned are starting to integrate this. So for example, Notion has got Notion AI, which can help you to write documentation and all that. So I think it's going to come embedded, and it's already coming embedded into those tools. But I think that's a necessary part of the stack now.
So how do you use tools like ChatGPT, like in your own practice? Because undeniably, as you said, it's definitely part of the future. I think everyone uses it in different ways, and the way that you described it there is almost like being a mentor. What types of things are you prompting it then for on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I think there's several areas. One is everything linked to like writing, so translation, summarization, rewriting when you have to send an email to like a customer or sales representative to say no. It always helps to phrase it in a nice way.
Right.
By the way, I've used that in meetings as well. If it's the third time I have to say some kind of version of no to a customer or a sales rep in a meeting, at some point you kind of run out of ways to formulate it. So quickly on the sides. So I mean, that I think we're all familiar with. There's a lot around ideation as well, like give me ideas, suggest this is what I was thinking, tell me what else, what am I forgetting, and all of that. A lot around ideation, and I like thinking about like objection handling, like okay, this is my idea, like what could go wrong. One of the things I like doing, because you were asking about like frameworks and tools, I use as in product management, and one of the things I do is also like pre-mortem. So okay, like let's imagine we launch this, what could go wrong. So to anticipate the risk on a project. And so I think this is a great tool to come up with objections, like what could people say if I do this, what could go wrong. There's a lot around data analysis as well. I don't think that's quite developed, because if you use the basic version of ChatGPT, you can't really do that very well. But if you have tools where you can put some kind of spreadsheet in it or some numbers, it can help with some data analysis. Actually, funny enough, I just read a post this morning on LinkedIn, which was about democratization of data and the fact that now we've got more and more data. We're asking to be data driven and all of that. But one, it takes a lot of time to do all of that analysis. And two, there is a risk of interpreting the data in the wrong way, either if you're not on purpose because you make a mistake, or for example, we data can be misinterpreted, or either because you have a particular agenda, like we see, for example, on the media, and you're trying to push that. So help with data analysis and with like challenging as well your assumptions. So we have some examples of use cases. I use it a lot for marketing as well, and for sorts of strategy write up where you just have to write things, like reorder them and kind of make them like, I guess, more structured. Yeah.
What wouldn't you use it for?
Right. So big warning: do not use the free version of ChatGPT for anything confidential with your company information or PII, personal information, all of that. But if you've got access to tools which are approved by your business, what wouldn't I use it for? I think, well, so there's all the things around limitations. So, for example, ChatGPT being trained on data that's relatively old, that's not up to date. So just be careful about that. Using, limitations like it can hallucinate. So, check the sources, that kind of things. So all those things around like limitations of the models. And then I don't think it should be a replacement for thinking, right? There's a big question in the product world, and I think every worker is thinking, okay, will AI replace me? Well, if you stop thinking,
yeah.
And if AI is doing all the work, then yeah. So always having that kind of critical eye, like maybe like thinking ahead, thinking as well about the way you're going to design the prompts to get the right answer. But if your PRD is all AI and then you end up not doing a lot of things, I think it's worth asking yourself some questions. Yeah.
Are there any tips you got for people when it comes to writing a good prompt?
I think there's a lot of advice online which is about like designing the right prompt straight away, and I don't know, maybe I'm a bit lazy, but I just write not a great prompt from me. Because I just say, okay, tell me this already, or rewrite this, and then I refine it over time. So iteration.
Yeah.
And sometimes the ChatGPT gets it wrong, for example. I'm like, oh no, that's not what I meant. Do this instead.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm more about like iterations rather, and seeing like step by step. Okay, I think breaking down into steps is important. Okay, first do this, especially when it's something complex and it could be like a black box as well. You want to ask the model to break it down into steps. But yeah, I work by iteration.
Nice. So was it that was it. I was giving a talk on facilitation using AI, and there was the awesome crowd, and somebody said about the dangers of AI, and I think and the point they were making was that you need to be critical of what it's presenting to you. You don't just trust it, and it made me realize actually I tend not to use. I'm a user of ChatGPT 4. I don't use it for the objective truth. I never look for it to give me the objective truth, but I'm looking for it to give me something to get me thinking. And I think if you take it all as subjective, then you've got some base to work from. But if you think it's going to always give you the absolute objective truth, then I think that's probably where people are going to slip up, because who knows what type of stuff it's going to spit out. And if you're not fact checking it or validating it or using your own brain, then it's a very challenging. You end up in a bit of a sticky situation, I think, for some. Now I know that like data is something that you're really passionate about, and I think when you came on the podcast, you mentioned about data analysis skills. I think talking about as one of the key things that is going to be necessary for future product professionals. Could you give us a bit more of an insight into that? So I know it's something that people are interested in, and particularly when people mentioned it when they listened to the podcast episode, and you mentioned those types of skills. I don't think we kind of delved into it quite enough. So yeah, how does the role of data and data analytics and data analysis play into them, the future-proofing the role of product managers?
So for background, I was a data analyst. So that's how I started my career before moving into product management. So I may be a bit biased, because we talk a lot about AI being biased, but I think we shouldn't forget that as humans we are too. Anyway,
just one big bias. That's all we are, I think.
Yes. So that's probably why I got into data analytics, SaaS solutions, and data modeling, and data as a product, and all of that, because I was a data analyst initially, and I think data it should be driving a lot of decision. We need better data, and all of that. So what I would say about why I mentioned this as one of the top skills as a product manager is because, well, if you read most job descriptions, they say data-driven decisions, right? So that's how you make decisions. Sometimes you've got less data than others. Like, I'm especially thinking when I launched a product from 0 to 1, there was no data, so there was no mixed panel to look at. So we just didn't have any data. So sometimes it's very limited. You're a bit in the dark, and you have to move forward with the limited amount of data you've got, and that's the whole point of experimentation and iteration and all of that. But it's at the core of every decision. So just like I think nowadays every company is a tech company. Even I'm going to talk with friends in the UK, but like Tesco, grocery brand, well, they are a tech company. Everybody, like BP, oil company, every company is a tech company. I think every job will have some kind of data component in it. And for product management, it's already the case. So being data literate is super important to be able to make decisions. And it's going back to your point around that kind of critical thinking. I think it's also very important to be critical about the data we've got, because we see a lot in product management of vanity metrics, like this number of users. I'm like, well, is it good? Is it bad? I work in B2B enterprise, as we talked about before. People are forced to use my product.
Yes.
The number of users, it's good to give you an indication of the scale. I think, are you working for a startup or are you working for an enterprise? What's the impact if you make a change in the product that's breaking everybody's platform and all of that? So it still gives an indication, but it's not so much about the data point itself, but how you use it. And what I see happening a lot is leadership teams, looking at data that comes from all different sources, and they just look at dashboards, and the dashboards just have numbers. They don't have the story, and it's very easy to make the wrong interpretation, to compare different parts of a product which shouldn't be compared, because one part of a product is, for example, the main platform, the other one is an add-in, and you're or an add-on to the product, and you're kind of comparing the number of users. Well, that's not the same. Or you're looking at, and you see a dip. Well, what's the dip in usage or whatever? Maybe it's some kind of seasonality. Maybe so. Actually, I think the story around data is a lot more important than the data point itself, because with one data point you could tell many stories. You could say one thing or the reverse. So it's very important to be able to not only interpret data, because some teams are lucky, some product teams are lucky to have data analytics teams to help them. But I think a bit like user research teams, they are here to build the capabilities, but also to empower us to be able to do that. So not every product manager can run an experiment and have one data analyst assigned just for them to help them deal with the data. So it's important to know how to do this, and then to know how to convey the right message with it.
Awesome. So it's around the storytelling aspect of how those data points come together, and avoiding vanity metrics and making sure that there are fair comparisons. And I suppose then there's a bit of a education for certain leadership teams, I suppose. I mean, it comes back to, and it sounds really contrived, I think it's been said for many years, but the idea of outcomes over outputs, it's really easy the stuff that's easy to measure is often probably sometimes the least valuable stuff. But as soon as it becomes more of a challenge, then sometimes you find that's more valuable, but there's definitely a point at which the investment to measure the thing you think you want to measure becomes reduces the actual overall value of it, and how much money do you want to spend. And this is, I think, part of the problem with things like OKRs, is that when you're working in a large organization, and let's say there's, I don't know, they've got 20 products, or 20, externally facing, they've got 20 products, and each of those products has OKRs, and each has four or five OKRs, and they will have 4 or 5 key results. And then you look at that across the organization, all that data means absolutely nothing, really, in the grand scheme of things. And it gets aggregated up to a point where it's meaningless anyway. So I think it's a really great point. But I suppose there needs to be a level of simplicity almost. And not measuring everything, just measuring what matters. Is that a fair statement?
I think so, definitely. I think that's something. There is a simplicity as well, because it comes back to also like goals, right? If you got too many goals, then what are you really working on? But from a communication perspective as well, it becomes very difficult to just tell people, okay, we're driving this and that and that, and the message becomes all very confusing. I was thinking of something, but I can't remember right now. What's that? Oh yeah, and I think on OKRs, it got me thinking about the all those frameworks, right? So OKR is some kind of like framework that is used a lot, and it's very trendy in product, and there are the frameworks, and there is reality as well, and you don't have to follow by the book. And I think that's the challenge we see, is that a lot of product managers are trained just on those frameworks. So if you do a product bootcamp, they may be actually a lot of frameworks that are presented to you, but in reality, it's not as straightforward, and you have to adapt to the way your company operates, to the way your product works, and it's not just applying a framework.
No, I wish it was. I wish it was.
Job would be replaced by AI.
Yeah. No, I wish it was that simple, and I wish I'd thought about it, and I'd be retired by now. I'll be somewhere else. I'll be on a boat somewhere in Lanzarote, perhaps.
No, that's my holiday. Don't be
there you go. No, well, I'll rub it in. Well, that's been an extraordinarily quick 50 minutes. I flown by. I think it's been brilliant. I've learned some new things today, and it's been nice to reconnect with you, Magali. For people that want to, I suppose, if they want to reach out, if they want to contact you, I mean, LinkedIn is the best place.
Yeah, LinkedIn. How can we live without LinkedIn?
Yeah.
This is an example of consumer product that we're kind of forced to use as well, because if you're not on LinkedIn, you don't exist.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn, and you can send me a message, you can connect, and there's also a link to my, you can book some time with me in my calendar. So if you just want to chat,
Oh, thanks. Oh, for the listener. Okay.
I mean, you too.
I put the link to your website and your book into the comments for this event, so that'll be preserved forever. And also, Magali, I think, are you? I say this tentatively because I can't think where we got to with it, but your workshop's going to be on the Sheave website at some point soon on feature deprecation.
Yes, I need to schedule some new dates. Yeah, definitely. So there's one workshops around the product roadmap, if people are interested in, and but just chat to me, and let's see what people have on their mind as well. And I'm also doing some mentoring as well. But yeah, head over to my website or your website.
Yeah, no, go to Magali's website for now. But Magali, you'll be on our site, and you'll be there as an associate, and we'll get your workshops on there because we are working hard to get some of the best people that we know in the product space, kind of working with us and help generate opportunities for everyone. Because I think I know a number of my clients really benefit from the types of things that you talk about, and particularly feature deprecation. That's one which is I really love. I really love. But I don't think there isn't a broad love and understanding for it yet. But we're going to look to rectify that.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's the other workshop as well around product deprecation, because it's. I mean, I've never been in a PM role where I did not have to deprecate a feature of a product. And the first time I came across that, I was like, "Oh, nobody told me how to do that." Yes.
That's brilliant. It's a great topic. And yes, of course, your podcast episodes where we spoke about feature deprecation and the future of product management, they're both available on the Product Agility podcast. So be sure to follow the podcast and Sheev if you want to be made aware of, Magali's previous episodes and new episodes and things that we'll be doing over the coming months. Magali, I hope that we get to meet up again in person at some point soon. I'm not sure if you're going to productize this year, but we will be there. You're not
I think
going.
I'll be on holiday somewhere else. No,
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm going to be on holiday in Portugal. You see.
Yeah, it's a good destination. So.
Yes, it is. It is. Magali, thank you so much for time. Everyone, thank you very much for coming along. We'll be back with another live stream at some point very soon. Who do we have up next? I think the next one we have two on one day. We have Julie Dirksen, where we're going to be looking at systems thinking and behavior change. And we have Liz Immo, who's going to be talking about impact mapping, both on the 28th of May, so 1 month's time. So make sure that you hang around for that. Magali, thank you once again. Everyone, thank you for hanging around. Cheers.